Hey, what is up guys? Eric Thane here from Cinema Mastery, and welcome to another lighting breakdown. In today's video, I'm going to be breaking down one of my most difficult scenes that I've ever lit, and I'll kind of walk you through exactly how we did it. So let's jump into it. Alright, so this is probably one of the hardest scenes that I've lit on a recent project, and not hard because it required a lot of gear or we had to do a lot of things with it. It more was like, well, we probably should have had a lot of gear, but didn't really have the budget to have like tons of gear and like everything, a crew and everything to get done what we needed to. So we were working a little bit scrappy, and we were having to just kind of make do with what we had in order to get it done. So this is the scene here. We've got a couple eating dinner at a restaurant, and this is basically just one shot from it. This is, by the way, raw ungraded footage. So this is straight out of the camera, exactly how it looked after we lit it. Now this is what it looked like before we lit it with the lights in the location. So you notice that it's really green. The lights are kind of gross. We weren't able to use the lights in the location just because they're not quality lights. They're not good film lights, and the color accuracy is wrong, and it was just hard. So what we actually did is, to start out shooting this, we started off by turning off all of the lights in the location. Because we needed to be able to just like get rid of that green cast, get rid of all those gross lights that were happening in the scene, turn those all off, and then start putting our own lights up, and I'll kind of walk you through exactly how we did that. So the first thing that we did is we turned off all the lights. Now there were a couple emergency lights in the restaurant that we weren't able to turn off, so we flagged those off with flags, and so we put those up. Those are over on the side here, so off this direction, kind of on the camera side, we've got some flags up above frame here, just blocking some of that light so it doesn't hit the scene. So if you're in a situation like that where there's lights you can't turn off, you can always put black flags in front of them or black wrap around them in order to flag them off so they're not coming into your scene. Okay, so for our first light on our talent, our main key light is an overhead soft light on them that is giving us this kind of overhead light coming onto them. So this is like an aperture 120D or 300D. I know we had both on set, but I don't remember which one was which. But one of those lights that was up here, just rigged up like on a C-stand, boomed out over them, so that we could get kind of a top light coming down. The reason why we want that top light is because it's a restaurant, and so we want to motivate the type of light that would be in a restaurant like this. Normally it would be overhead lighting. Now obviously we don't want to use the overhead lights that are already in there because it won't look good. We want a nice soft top light coming down on them. And so you notice that we've got this nice light on him here, and then you can see it on her as well. And then on the bottom half of their heads and faces, we've got this shadow happening, right? So we talk a lot about reverse key lighting on these videos, and how when you're lighting your subject, you almost always want to light them from the back, from the far side, so that you're pulling the shadows towards the camera, right? So when the shadows are on the camera side, it means that you can see the shadows, and by being able to see light and shadow, it gives the face more three-dimensionality. It feels more lifelike and more nice and flattering. If you were to light on the front side, it kind of makes the face look really flat because you can't see the shadows as well. So this is the same situation, but when you're lighting from above, you don't want the light to be behind your subject. Unless you're going for a very specific look where you're trying to get a silhouetted look, which is what you're going to end up with. You want the light to actually be a little bit in front of them. So if you can see like where the table's at here, if you take like the middle of the table and go straight up, that's about where our light was at. Okay, so it's right above the table. It's not directly above our talent, but it's because we want that light to wrap around from the top onto the front of their faces just a little bit so that we can see them a little bit better. Now, we don't have to worry about the shadows because since we're lighting from above, we're naturally going to get shadows down below. And so lighting from above, you get the light on top and you get the shadows down below, which is still giving us that nice three-dimensionality to their faces. Okay, so our second light in this scene is the rim light. So you'll notice it here. If you look at, you can see a little bit of that rim on her head. You can see it happening on his forehead. And then you can see it even spilling onto his jacket there, a little bit onto her shoulder. And then you're also getting a little bit of that blue backlight happening over here. You can see it on these tables over here. And then a big reflection, of course, right here on this table. So what we are using for this light is, it's over here. It is a quasar tube, which is a 4-foot tube light. And it is set to a very cool white balance, so like 6,000 Kelvin. I didn't mention that our key light in this situation is actually set to around 3200 Kelvin. So since we're using aperture lights, they're daylight balanced, and so we had a gel on it, a CTO or color temperature orange gel on that in order to make it around 3200. And then our backlight here, this quasar, is actually 5600. Now the reason that I'm doing that is because I want to add some color contrast to this scene. If everything was just warm, then it would look a little bit boring and it would just be warm. So by adding that blue in there, especially that backlight, it gives kind of a bluish, like moonlit, luxurious lighting effect where you get that color contrast between the blue and the orange, which are complementary colors, which looks nice anyway. And it kind of motivates moonlight, even though it doesn't really make sense that like moonlight would be coming in right here unless there was like a skylight up there or something. It's still, it almost feels like there's a window over here and there's like some light from outside coming in, just helping it give that little bit of like luxurious moonlit look. So I think it looks really nice and gives us some nice color contrast between the warm and the cool. Now, when I do this, I always get questions down in the comments, people asking what my white balance is set at in these situations. So whenever you're working with different color temperatures, usually the best idea is to kind of split the difference. So in this situation, I'm going to split the difference, but I'm also going to lean a little bit more heavily towards my my key light. So I don't want my skin tones on the guy here and on the girl here to look too warm, right? I want them to be warm because this is a warm scene. We're in a restaurant, there's warm lighting, it's internal tungsten lighting, right? We're motivating that light, but I don't want it to be too warm. So my white balance is going to be somewhere around 4000 Kelvin. So this light on our talent is about 3200. Our backlight is going to be about 6000. And so by putting the white balance at 4000, that gives me, pretty close to natural skin tones, allowing them to be a little bit warm. But then what it does is by putting the white balance down that low, it makes our blue light, our 6000 Kelvin light here, really, really blue, which is what gives it this effect that makes it so blue here on the background and on this table as well. Okay, so moving on from there, the next step is after lighting the talent, we have to light the ambience, the environment, right? And this is something that I've talked about before in past videos, how it's not just about lighting your talent, but it's also lighting the entire environment in order to make it all look good and all come together for a cohesive image. So what we've got going on here is very simply, like I said, we turned off all the lights in the scene and we had to relight this from scratch. So we lit a few candles around the restaurant. That's just giving us these little bits of bokeh in the background, which are really nice. And just for a little bit of ambiance, of course, we got one here on the front table as well. And then as we were lighting this scene, I noticed that we had these stone walls over here that are really cool. And I definitely wanted to feature those and show them since this is a video for a hotel, and so we're trying to show off the location, and so I really wanted to feature these like really cool stone walls. And so we've got another light back here, all the way back in the background, like way back there. It's another quasar, actually another 4-foot tube, and it is set to tungsten, so it's around 3200 to match like the warm of the scene, right? And it is lighting from all the way back there across the room and hitting these walls. Now you might be wondering, like, Eric, why would you put it all the way back there and not just like up here? Well, the reason is because we're trying to, well, first of all, we don't want the light to be in the shot, so it has to be, outside of frame over here. But just like we try to light our talent from the back in order to create shadow and light, we're doing the exact same thing with these pillars here. So notice that we have shadow on one side, light on this side, shadow, light, which is giving us that really nice checkerboard effect, right? Now, we've talked about this before. You want to have dark, light, dark, light, dark, light. These little pockets of shadow and light are what create interest throughout your scene. Now you notice that that's even playing with our talent as well, since we've got shadow, light, and then we've got shadow on our talent, and then light on our talent, and then shadow in the background. Okay, so we're getting that same effect. So if we had just lit these walls from the front, like let's say we put a C-stand and a light right here, just in front of the frame right here to light them, then this would all be lit and it wouldn't be quite as interesting. So we're creating interest and contrast by lighting from the reverse side. The other thing that's happening with that light back there is that we're getting these nice little reflections on our kind of metal little food containers in the background. And that was another thing that we really wanted to accomplish with this light. Since we've got that metal in the background, it's an opportunity to create bokeh, little spots of light in the background that will just create a little bit more interest in the scene and a little more highlights around the scene. Now, the only other two things to point out in this scene are these overhead lights. These are actually the only practical lights in the location that we actually left on. So these have already some sort of tungsten, probably incandescent bulb in them. And so they are already the right color temperature, or at least very close to it. They are a warm color temperature and look nice, didn't have that green cast to them. So we were able to leave those on. And then the last thing that we did is, after setting all this up and everything was looking pretty good, this back wall was just looking really boring and dark, and I felt like we needed to do something about it. And so we have one more spotlight, again over here. It's an aperture, I think it's a 120D that we've got over here, and we've got a spotlight lens on it so that we're getting a nice like circular spotlight. And you can see it, it's really subtle, but there's just a very subtle spot of blue, again like 6,000 Kelvin balanced light happening right there on the background, just giving it a little bit of light so that you can see what was going on. Without that, it just looked really dark and very uninteresting. So that's allowing us to just see a little bit of what's happening in the background there to give it a little bit more interest. By the way, when I'm putting together scenes like this, nothing about these lighting setups is random. All the lighting that you're seeing and where I'm placing the lights and what types of lights and what how soft they are, or whether they're diffused, or where I'm positioning them, all of those things actually come down to proper lighting theory, which is incredibly important to pay attention to when you're lighting any scene. And if you understand the right lighting theory and understand the principles of lighting, it makes it so that you can go into any scene like this. And even if it's difficult, even if you don't have a lot of gear or a lot of the things that you need, or you're working with like lights that are unavailable, you'll know how, just by following the principles of lighting, how to shoot a beautiful scene and light it so that it looks nice, it looks cinematic, and it looks professional. So if you're interested in learning the principles of lighting, really understanding like how to go into any scene and know exactly what to do right from the get-go, I want you to check out my online course called Lighting Secrets. It's down in the description below. It is a full masterclass on my entire lighting process from beginning to end, how I look at lighting, how I look at the characteristics of light, how to modify those characteristics, and what gear to use in your lighting so that you can get a really professional cinematic look in anything that you do. So if you're interested in that and you want to learn lighting and really start taking your videos to the next level and make them look really cinematic, I would highly recommend checking out the link down below for Lighting Secrets. If you have any questions or comments about this video, feel free to post them down below as well, and I will see you on the next video.